Idalia is off the North Carolina coast and post-tropical, but it will be meandering around for the next several days or longer, and who knows what lurks in the future of that particular tropical storm now that it's not a tropical storm. We've got Labor Day and the Labor Day holiday weekend, which is looking terrific. We'll talk about that and a bunch of other stuff. We're good at talking about stuff here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Thursday night, the 31st of August. And it's brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Mulch, topsoil, sand. This winter it's salt. And, of course, the hardware you need to get you through anything, including a tropical storm or a hurricane. 631-756-1125. You know what, Joe? I can't find better prices anywhere, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com, Joe.
Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. Use the coupon code I want a weather station for this, if you decide to purchase the weather station, and deep down inside you know you want one, or any of the other weather gadgets and gizmos and smart weather fashion that they have on the Tempest website. I want a weather station is the coupon code, and if you use it, what will they get, Joe?
They will get 10% off, Joe. So don't just loll around the house. Do it.
Right.
Get that 10% off by getting something great from Tempest.
Don't just walk around like a sack of meal. I saw an old commercial last night, and I completely forgot about it, for June Lockhart for Shake and Bake.
Oh, really?
Well, I was looking at something at on YouTube, and that video popped. It was the next video in line. I don't know why it was there, but yeah, it was June Lockhart as doing a Shake and Bake commercial. I forgot about that. And had hair, her, beautiful. What a beautiful woman that she is. And this is the '60s, so her hair was piled all the way up to the ceiling.
I remember a Shake and Bake commercial with a little girl, and I don't remember the specifics of the commercial, but all I do is remember the end of the commercial where the little girl, which might be like 6, 7 years ago, she said, "It's Shake and Bake, and I helped."
Yes, I remember that. Yes. All right. So speaking of which, I went out today and I bought Vidalia onions because I needed them for a recipe that I put. I was with my recipe.
Right.
I was making a pecan sausage stuffing, so I needed Vidalia Vidalia onions, and I mentioned that because all this week with Hurricane Idalia and Tropical Storm Idalia, I kept wanting to say Vidalia, okay, because the Vidalia onion does grow here in Georgia. So anyway,
well, I will tell you, I will say that that particular hurricane, that name, has brought quite a few tears to people who especially live in the Big Bend area of Florida, because the destruction, as I saw tonight on some of the evening newscasts, was really, really incredible.
Was it more wind or storm surge?
No, more storm surge than anything else.
Yeah, coming up on the night of the full moon and everything, and the angle of approach that it had. It was basically just squeezing all that water on the east side, just piling on. It was a recipe for a nightmare from that respect.
And now it's kind of, you look at the, I'm sure we will in a few moments, you take a look at the National Hurricane Center map of the Atlantic Basin, and we have one hurricane, one tropical storm, one post-tropical storm, a system that has a 40% chance of developing into a tropical cyclone, and yet another off of the African coast, which has a 90% chance. So all of a sudden, the Atlantic is like...
Everything is spinning.
Everything is going round and round and round, yeah.
Yeah, my video locked up, so I'm switching cameras here. So everybody just stay put for one moment. I'll get that out of the way and move this out of the way. Okay, so now I'm there. All right. Yeah, everything is spinning. It's an El Nino year, which is this is not supposed to be happening, but it is.
Didn't we say some weeks ago that all of the supposed rules of
All the
meteorology?
rules, Joe, all the rules are not working.
Yes,
I wonder what that means for the wintertime. I just wonder what that means.
I don't know.
Will it snow on a southeast wind? I mean, strange things are happening. Not sure why.
Yep.
But anyway, we're not going to sit here trying to figure out why. We're just going to try to forecast it because that's what Joe and I do. We forecast. And on that note, so let's take a look at. Let's start with the Loupe des Satellites, or as it's more commonly known as the satellite loop, and the circulation of Idalia is still fairly well defined on the loop, except for the fact that there's no convection. We talked about this yesterday, Joe. That all the convection was forecast to disappear, and really it has. Now that circulation, is Bill Goodman, meteorologist from NWS Upton, and an occasional guest on our program here, called it a zombie cane. And that's pretty much what it is. Now, they've got tropical storm watches up for Bermuda, even though this is post-tropical, because there are hints that as it gets further out to the east, and particularly as it gets to the area around Bermuda, that there might be a bit more in terms of upper air support, that we could see this, regenerate technically into a tropical system. So we'll have to see what happens over the coming days, but it's going to be around all weekend. And by the way, Joe, we should tell them there is no show this Sunday, okay? There is no show this Sunday. It is the Labor Day weekend, and Joe and I have chose not to labor, all right? And that's all. But this ain't done yet. There's so much traffic out in the Atlantic. You've got this big ridge that's building across the United States. This thing's going to get hung up out there, and who knows where it's going to wind up ultimately. I know the Hurricane Center is doing, they just want it to go away. So, but there's enough going on some of the global models that certainly leads one to pause.
Yeah, and the tropical storm that I just alluded to, I mentioned all of the items that are out over the Atlantic Ocean, and the tropical storm that I'm making reference to is a newly formed one, which is presumably, according to the Hurricane Center, only going to be around for a day or so. I'm kind of wondering, scratching my head. So if it's that amorphous or that diffuse, and you have a question as to whether or not it's going to last more than a day, why did you even give it a name at all? But in any case, it's Jose.
Yes, and in fact, since you brought it up, I'm bringing up the tropical loop here so we could see all this stuff going on. Now, the system that's off the African coast, I mean, clearly there's a broad circulation there. Just you don't even have to look at you don't have to even see the picture, the loop move. You can just look at the way the clouds, the signature of the clouds on the satellite, that there is some sort of broad circulation out there, just west of the Cabo Verde Islands.
And that having been said, the Hurricane Center, I believe, is giving a 90% chance for that to rev up into a tropical system. So that may be our next named storm.
Right. So you can't really, you sort of see half of, Idalia is over here somewhere. Okay. And Franklin is over here. This is the tropical depression that became now Tropical Storm Jose. And this is those are the remnants of Gert, Joe, the remnants of Gert. And then you've got this thing. This is the wave that's off the African coast. So, yeah, they're all bunched up in the western half of the Atlantic, and then you've got a gap, and then you've got this wave off the African coast, and there's a couple of other waves behind it that are going to be coming off that the European model keys on. So I guess I'm not going to be right with the idea that things in the Atlantic may quiet down for a while after these get out of the way, because it looks like it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It may remain busy.
Yeah, it looks like, well, what's the old saying that on Labor Day there's always at least one tropical system out there, and we may have more than one this year.
Correct. So uh, let's go back to the U.S. loop, and we'll bring that up because actually, what is somewhat remarkable today, Joe, and you look at across the United States, you have the tropical, the post-tropical storm Idalia now offshore. You got a couple of thunderstorms going on and scattered around in Florida. You got some rain in parts of the Pacific Northwest, and the rest of the country is almost cloud-free. I mean, this is the ridge, sort of this east-west ridge that's across the United States right now, and it's perfect timing for the Labor Day weekend for not just the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states, but pretty much up and down the East Coast
Yes, and
and west to the Mississippi and beyond.
it's a huge. I mean, like you talk about flexing its muscles. It is flexing its muscles. It is really going to be spreading out and bringing a spell of dry weather and also very warm to hot weather to much of the contiguous United States. Once again, the only place that looks like it's going to be cooler than normal or near normal will be out in the far west. Meanwhile, everybody else will again be rather warm to hot, including here by the time we get to Sunday and early next week.
Indeed. And by the way, dew points in the 50s came all the way down to the southern Appalachians to me. It was 61 here this morning, and it was delightful, and it was a really nice day. It wasn't that humid at all. We had some clouds that came up in the middle of the day, but that was just about it. And I'm just looking at some of the obs further to the north at 5 o'clock this afternoon. I mean, these dew points, Joe, in the low and middle 40s all over the place. In New England, down into Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, even down into central Virginia, seeing dew points in the mid 40s.
It was amazing. It was really, really nice out there. As anticipated, we had high clouds this morning, the peripheral or fringe effects of Idalia. But then, as that high pressure system over the Great Lakes started to push in our direction, all those clouds got pushed on out. And I was doing the lawn this afternoon around 3 o'clock, and I actually paused to stop and just look all the way around the sky. And I said, boy, I can't remember a day that one, I saw a sky as blue as this. Two, temperatures which really were very, very nice, mostly in the mid and low 70s. But three, and I didn't get the exact value, but I'm sure that, as predicted, dew points dropped here in the Hudson Valley through the 50s and even into the upper 40s by the time we got to mid-afternoon. It was about as perfect a day, save again for those high clouds this morning, than you could possibly ask for. It looks like we're on our way toward another great day tomorrow. The only thing that might have been, if I had to complain about something, was the wind. At times, those winds were gusty out of the north and northwest at about 20 and even 30 miles an hour. But those winds are going to die off quickly in the coming hours, and that'll lead to a radiational cooling night tonight, and then a very, very nice, beautiful day for tomorrow.
Sort of the unintended consequence of having a tropical storm nearby because it pulled down all this dry air. In fact, it's bone dry through the Ohio Valley. I mean, I'm looking here across Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, even into northern Mississippi and northern Alabama. Dew points in the 50s, dew points in the 50s in Arkansas. Uh, Temperatures, of course, warm up the further west you go because you got a lot of 90s in Oklahoma. But the dew points were here, even as hot as it is. The dew points were on the lowish side. Also across Kansas, very warm to hot with temperatures into the 90s, but dew points in the 50s, which is at least bearable. And you have to go. I mean, go looking down into Texas. Even in Texas now, okay, here it's a little more extreme in terms of the temperatures because they're in the mid 90s to a few spots hitting over 100, but the dew points weren't too bad. I mean, they were down in the low 50s, even some 40 dew points showing up. You got to get actually all the way down, even down in South Texas. But it's it's not bad, but it's 101 with a dew point of 59 is not exactly paradise. But
Yeah.
still, for the most part, what's in the eastern part of the United States is some really nice, delightful air, and it's got one, probably one a day or so, a day or a day and a half to play out. Because the humidity is going to start to come up over the weekend. But you know what, Joe? There's no tropical air around, so even in places to the south. So when the wind goes west and southwest, the dew points are going to come up, but they're not going to come flying up.
No, they'll creep up.
Yeah.
I mean, Saturday, probably dew points will be still tolerable in the upper 50s, although you might notice it because you're getting accustomed to these extremely low dew points in the 40s. But then on Sunday, probably back in the low and mid 60s and probably up near 70, believe it or not, dew point wise on Monday. And on Monday, we look for temperatures also to be close to 90 degrees. So it's going to be a rather hot and, yes, rather humid day, Labor Day 2023. And that'll continue as we move on into much of next week.
Right, and in spite of the rising dew points, there won't be a drop of rain, not just in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, but a pretty large portion of the eastern two-thirds of the United States probably not see much in the way of thunderstorms. So this is all coming with decent weather. You look at the radar, you see what's offshore. That's all rain, rain, the back edge of Idalia, post-tropical cyclone Idalia. You've got some scattered showers and storms over the state of Florida, back to the Panhandle, some in southeast Louisiana. Some showers and thunderstorms clustered in Arizona with the monsoon. There's rain cutting across Oregon into eastern Washington and northern Idaho. Also, some rain showers in western Washington and some rain showers in northeastern Minnesota. But everybody else, it's pretty nice. Storm Prediction Center doesn't show much in the way of severe weather risk other than what's down in Arizona. So the Southwest has a marginal risk of severe weather and 2%, less than 2% tornado risk. In being indicated. Tomorrow, the marginal risk is again Arizona, southeastern California, southern and eastern Nevada, western Utah into southeast Idaho. Much of the country, no thunderstorms are forecast, a little bit in the Gulf states and down to Florida. And then as we move on to day 3, and this is for Saturday into Sunday, again, most of the country not seeing much in the way of anything. Other than down near the Gulf Coast of Florida, the southwest pushing up into parts of the northwest, just general thunderstorm activity, but nothing severe. And as far as rainfall is concerned, this is the WPC 7-day rainfall forecast. Now, this goes through next Thursday night, 8 o'clock next Thursday night. So I think the light green that you see there over southern New York, southeastern New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, eastern PA, down into Virginia and interior Virginia, North Carolina. That's what the next cold front that probably is not going to get here until a week from today. So it's all back end loaded. It will probably not see a drop of rain until a week from today.
I agree. And the system actually on the 6 to 10 and the 8 to 14 day outlook from Climate Prediction Center, they actually have above normal precipitation for our part of the country, the Northeast. And I suspect that in part is due to that system that looks like an upper trough that'll be slowly working its way through the Northeast, beginning late next week and maybe on into, not this weekend, but next weekend as well.
A little bit of heavier rain along the Gulf Coast in the next 7 days, but it's confined to the immediate coast, up to an inch and a half to as much as several inches there. Also, in the southwest going northward from Arizona north to Idaho and parts of the Pacific Northwest, a little active there. But again, much of what you see here from the Rockies eastward to the East Coast and north to the Great Lakes and south to almost down to the entire region of the Gulf states. Very little in the way of precipitation over the next week. So looking ahead to the overall upper air pattern, this is what it looked like this morning. Nice deep trough moving through New England. You've got the trough of Idalia right along the North Carolina coast. At least that's where it was this morning. And if you look to the east of that, you could see the upper air feature that defines Hurricane Franklin, which is taking forever to get out of the way. And you've got the ridge in the west, at least for now, at least today, just basically confined to the southwest and kind of nosing into parts of the southern plains and into Texas. Now, we also have troughing in the Pacific Northwest going up in toward the northern plains. There's a nice little upper low there, and there's another little trough that's there in the west. Well, the trough in the east is going goodbye. So once that goes out, it lifts out, the upper high shifts eastward. You've got a deep trough dropping down along the west coast. So the upper high is building where it's wanted to build all summer long, and that's in the Central Plains. And you see it right in here. This is by the time we get to Saturday morning, there's a strong upper high here. That's going to keep those temperatures in the 90s. It's going to keep it hot in the Central Plains and even pushing up into the parts of the northern plains. That ridge is actually we're going to be on the edge of that ridge starting on Saturday here in the east. And then that ridge is going to start pushing a little bit further to the east early next week. In fact, it's in the Ohio Valley down into the Gulf states because there's troughing coming into the west. So that hot weather that's in the Central Plains is going to cool off. But we still got this ridge holding on, and you'll notice off the east coast there's an upper low, and that represents, part of that represents Idalia, and that's why I said earlier that there's probably some weird stuff that might try to happen here with that that upper low being sort of trapped. You got, it's kind of weird, Joe. You got this upper high that's between, here's the complex that represents Idalia. The Canadian jet is well to the north and west. So, sometimes these things can do funny things when they're trapped in no man's land like this.
Yeah, and I'm trying to determine if what I'm seeing on the maps here for next week. Hang on for a second here.
What are we looking at?
Well, I'm trying to determine whether or not. I guess that's going to be Idalia. Is Idalia going to come try to make a comeback and kind of curve back around toward the Mid-Atlantic?
No, actually, if you look at the European, it takes. Well, I'll bring it up on the screen. So let's bring up the European today. The global models seem to want to turn it back to toward the coast in some fashion. The European today makes this a tropical, has convection developing around it, and I've got it. Should be up on the screen in a moment, but you'll see it here, Joe. It's coming up northwestward, and it goes, it takes it right over Cape Cod and landfalls on the New Hampshire, Maine coast next Friday. That's Idalia. If you follow it along, we could probably see it a little bit better on the North Atlantic view, but you'll see it here. All right, so I'll back it up, and then you can watch everything else that's spinning out in the Atlantic. But let's just let the maps load up here. Come on, there we go. So this was earlier today, of course. And, there goes. You see Franklin. Is the lead system that's trying to move away to the northeast. Idalia is moving southeast of Bermuda by Saturday. Then it just spins around during the day Saturday and into Sunday. Then starts to move toward and over Bermuda. And then it turns northwestward. You see it there, moving northwestward, straight northwest, moves right over Cape Cod, and makes a landfall right on the coast of either New Hampshire or southernmost Maine. And while that's going on, you'll notice that there are other things in the tropics here, at least on the Europeans' world. There's something east of the Bahamas. Looks like some kind of tropical storm right over here. There's another one behind that. So, the upper air, for something like this to happen, which is so rare, you got to have an almost perfect upper air setup. And this this coming back to the coast, Joe, there's a little short wave on Sunday that moves out, that moves across New England. So if it misses that short wave, then it's going to be left there, and yeah, then you might have something ridiculous happen.
Yeah, I could remember a few very weird uh, tracks, hurricane or tropical storm paths that, if they go out, then all of a sudden they make a huge loop, and then they try to come back and whatever. That actually those date back into the '60s. So
Right. Well,
something
I think
now.
the strangest one is probably Hurricane Ginger, which I think was in 1969 or 66. I forget which one. I'm going to say 69. Ginger uh, recurved east of the North Carolina coast. It went all the way out to almost 40 degrees west, came to a grinding halt, and then turned and then went straight westward from there until it made landfall as a weak tropical storm in eastern North Carolina. But it went all the way out and then came all the way back. So it must have been a really unusual upper air setup for that to happen.
And I think the only storm since Ginger that even approached its length of longevity was Kyle. And in fact, you may remember that one of the forecasters at the Hurricane Center on one of the discussions said, staying alive, staying alive. Ha,
Yeah,
ha,
I remember.
Kyle. So it happens. It
Yeah.
happens. Every once in a while, you get these weird tracks across the Atlantic. And we may be seeing just that with Idalia.
Yep. Here's the big high for tomorrow. You can see, except for that rain in the Gulf Coast, it's just a lovely day for much of the East and Midwest and Ohio Valley and the Mississippi Valley and back over into the plains. Hardly even a thunderstorm around. That's just so weird. And then we take us through the weekend. The high is going to sink to the south. Idalia is offshore. We get into more of a west wind, so the temperatures move up. And we're still there on Monday and Tuesday. I just left the European up for laps. We're here on Wednesday. So we'll see what it'll be interesting to watch it over the next 3 or 4 days to see what happens. And it's not until, actually on the European, Joe, the European would argue if Idalia is going to make a run to New England like this, and I'm not saying that it will, it really doesn't show much of a cold front arriving late Thursday, which is what the GFS does because it takes Idalia, it tries to bring it a little bit back and then it turns it north and northeast toward Nova Scotia and goodbye. So the European would argue that we'd have to wait till next weekend to get a front with some showers and thunderstorms with that. So.
And Idalia may actually, or the remnants thereof, may actually serve as a block. So you see a cold front coming, approaching from the west Thursday, and you figure, okay, this will move on through Friday and pass us by the weekend. But if there's something along the lines of an upper trough, or if Idalia is out there, that thing may stall out. It may dissipate, or on the other hand, it may just, come on through and then sit there for a while, bringing precipitation for both weekend days, Saturday and for Sunday. Incidentally, on the potential hazards map from Climate Prediction Center, they have potential for heavy precipitation in the Northeast around September the 9th. And I would presume that is due in part maybe to Idalia's remnants and maybe in part to the cold front, the aforementioned cold front. So it'll be interesting. You're absolutely right. We'll see how things pan out as we get to the end of next week.
Right. 8 o'clock, Idalia is at 30, post-tropical cyclone Idalia, 33.4, 72.2. So it's pretty far out east of the North Carolina coast. And, not quite halfway out toward Bermuda. Top winds are 65 miles an hour, moving east at 21. You notice that they have it going from the white circle with the S to the black circle, meaning that they expect it to become a tropical storm again as it nears Bermuda, which it will do so on Saturday and still be around near Bermuda on Sunday, and then they turn it northward along 60. Now they're swinging it way out, okay? So if the European's going to be right, it's going to make a sharp left turn at some point. And then, of course, you notice that they have it post-tropical again by the time we get to 2 p.m. Tuesday, because it has to go away. We have to make it go away, Joe.
Yes, we have to.
All right.
George Senda is making a commentary. I'm not sure who he's answering here regarding the 1970s. The same types were warning us that we were headed for a new. Oh, I see now. All right, I see. His comment about us, Joe, is he said, "I know the real reason. The storms detect all of these weather videos and move closer to hear what is said about them. It's all Joe and Joe's fault." And that direct weather guy too, whatever that means.
George, he says so. He said on his recent post there on the chat board, he says the winter here is going to be hotter than usual. I hope it's not been like living in Vegas this summer. And I went to high school in Vegas. Luckily we had AC and a pool in 1068 when he was 16. 1068, okay. I guess I know you meant 1968, but 1068 is like William the Conqueror, I think. So
the Norman Conquest.
The Norman Conquest, exactly. Eleanor of Aquitaine. There's your the map of the tropical weather outlook, which is busy, busy, busy. Oh, now they went to an orange X on the remnants of Gert, Joe. An orange X now, so they've upped it to 40%. Chance that this could regurgitate into a tropical storm, and the red X off the African coast, 90% chance of developing over the next 48 hours and the next 7 days. A short-lived or short-lived tropical depression or tropical storm is expected to form later tonight or on Saturday, while the system moves northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour across the eastern tropical Atlantic. 2 carriage returns, 8 line feeds, 4 ends. That's it.
And I argue again about Jose. Would the hurricane forecasters 20 years ago?
No, they wouldn't have.
No, they wouldn't.
Well, you see, then you have to go back, and if you go back to those years, which you can't really do, especially pre the satellite era, then how many of these systems slipped underneath never got recognized because nobody knew they were out there?
Right. Right.
Because now the normals are up to 14. When you and I, when we started out professionally, the Atlantic normal was 10 tropical cyclones and 6 hurricanes. Now it's 14 and 8, and it's not necessarily because of increased activity. It's because of the fact that with all the technology we have now, they can find these things that are, some of these things that they've made storms have been minuscule. We had that storm, was it last year or 2 years ago? That was basically the size of a severe thunderstorm.
Right. I remember. I remember.
All right, you know what we'll do, Joe, because it is it's Thursday night, I'm sorry, and it's 8:10 and it's been a busy week, so I think we're going to cut the show short. And we'll save Briller Jeopardy for when we come back next Monday night. Okay. Frank Scalera banged the tip jar, by the way. Thank you, Frank, for hitting Super Chat tonight.
I also want to mention it was at the beginning of the show, and the fact that she put it up on the chat board suggests that she doesn't want to keep it to herself. She did make a post, and I think a lot of people have already seen it. And we wish her well, Ms. Spallerite, who was diagnosed today with breast cancer, and we're hoping that everything is going to be well with her. And I think I speak for everybody here at Joe and Joe and on the chat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I wish her the best of luck in the coming year as she undergoes treatment for that.
And that chat board, by the way, is like a family because everybody is here every night, 7:35, and they talk to each other and they have a great time. And every single person that's on there, and of course Joe and I as well, 100% total support. You have all our strength behind you to beat this thing. So it ain't going to be easy, but you're going to beat this thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We won't accept it any other way. Just to be clear. All right. You are going to beat this thing. All right. So let's say goodnight. And we will even not do the sponsorship at the end of the show tonight because I'm feeling. You know what, Joe? I was so unemotionally prepared for what happened to me today. First of all, I had a dentist appointment, a routine dentist appointment, 9 o'clock. Had my teeth cleaned, did that. Then drove back all the way home, which is 10 miles. I drove back to get the dog, to take him to the dog park. Then I drove the dog back to the dog park. Then the doorbell rings. Now I ordered a table for my deck, okay? And I don't know about you, but a lot of times when you buy furniture these days, you have to assemble it yourself. All right. And I knew it was going to be something that I would have had to assemble. The thing is, I bought it on Amazon 2 days ago, and it said that it was not going to be here until a week from tomorrow. Lo and behold, the table shows up today. Well, as I said before, I was not emotionally prepared. It did it did not come with a husband. Because whenever my theory is anytime you order something that requires it being put together, it needs to come with a husband to do it because I don't want to do it. Anyhow, and it's an outdoor table and it's like this brown table and it's got benches on it and it's all connected. So I couldn't build it in the house and carry it outside. I had to go outside, take everything out on the deck in the blaring Georgia sun and put this thing together. And it was I did weep. I briefly wept when I looked at because they give you the thing with the pictures and you have to sort of figure it out from the picture what you're supposed to do. Anyway, I'm exhausted because I got the darn thing together, so it's done. But anyway, I need some peace to get over the trauma of that today.
Okay, well. You've got peace and quiet now through the upcoming holiday weekend, and we'll all be back 7:35 on Labor Day Monday.
Have a great weekend, folks. Stay safe, and we'll see you on Monday. Nighty-night.
Nighty-night.